Hi, this is Kristin Brewe for the Talking Heads Project. Hi, my name is Kristin Brewe, and I have been a practitioner in advertising and PR for over 20 years. I've had just about every role you can imagine in advertising and public relations, everything ranging from brand marketing director, public relations director, communications director, copywriter, creative director, and pretty much everything in between. One of the things that's interested me as I have segued into teaching is this dichotomy or tension that exists between theory and practice. And I think it's one of the things we really need to resolve if we're going to create graduates who are very successful upon graduation. At the University of West London, where I teach, we are known as the Careers University. 96% of our graduates are employed within 6 months of graduation, something of which we're incredibly proud. And I think one of the reasons for that is because we never lose sight of the fact that people need to learn very practical skills. One of the challenges of that, however, is that best practice has to be rooted in theory. And I think often coming at things from the practitioner side of the conversation about our craft, practitioners often forget that best practice is rooted in some really fundamental theories that really haven't changed. It's one of the constants of our craft. And I think on the flip side of that, some academics that focus on advertising and public relations topics often forget that the reason why we do theory is because of the fact that we need to deliver successful campaigns for our clients and communicate effectively for very practical reasons. So I think bridging that conversation is really, really important in terms of advancing the knowledge of advertising and PR, but also in terms of providing students with the tools they need to succeed in a very challenging and competitive phase of our sector's lifespan. When I say that, I really am thinking about the digital economy and the fact that there is so much happening in the field of automation. I think creative folk, particularly, I think we always thought that copywriters and creative directors couldn't be replaced by robots. And I definitely think that maybe we're now seeing that that's not the case. And one of the things I talk about, with my students in terms of preparing them for the future is, how do you future-proof your career? And it's not enough, perhaps, that we focus on things like, the raw skills of coding a website or, delivering a digital PR campaign. And those things are going to change dramatically by the time they graduate. However, it's the thought process behind what we do that humans will still bring a lot to the table in terms of the evolving practice of communications. And I think, to that end, then you really need to make sure that graduates have a fundamental understanding of theory, because that's what drives our insight and our ability to kind of connect the dots, no matter how technology changes. One of the things I really liked about the text Essentials in Advertising was that it brought home a lot of those truths. The text Essentials of Advertising, very much talked about, theory in a way that was very kind of hands-on and easy to understand, and also, showed a lot of practical examples of how we apply theory. And as I said, I think that conversation is often neglected. Texts are either too theoretical or they're too practical. And I think this was a nice marriage of both. And also, too, I think, as I said, about, our kind of currently rapidly changing environment, for successful graduates to really kind of go out there and make the most of their careers, they need to understand what's core to our discipline. And, lucky for humans, theory and kind of how we apply that is one of the things that we can bring to the table in crafting really effective communication strategies. I think, one of the things, again, that's interested me as somebody that's moved from practice into higher education is that, so many advertising and public relations courses across the UK really seem to either focus on kind of pure theory or perhaps, pure practice. And I think that dialogue, really needs to kind of be resolved, if you will, as we create graduates across the UK that are going to be effective communicators. This kind of fascinates me greatly because partially because I come from a practical background, but also from an academic one. And I think that as we focus on more and more practical degrees to help graduates succeed in a really tough job market, no matter what you're teaching, academics and professionals really need to come together. I've attended a lot of really interesting events at trade bodies and nonprofit organizations that are focused on these kinds of dialogues. The PRCA is one example where practitioners and academics sat down and talked about, how do we create successful graduates? What's the need for a practical course like public relations, or, what's the need for a practical course like advertising? And I think, one of those aspects of that is that it's no longer enough to have very broad brush degrees. Those can be very great for certain kinds of students. But what industry is really looking for are people that can graduate and have a job on day one. That I don't need to train up about kind of the fundamentals of our craft. Happy to train up on specific software or databases that we might need to use. But I do want, graduates, when I'm kind of wearing my employer hat, that really understand, how and why our business really works. And our business is about persuasion, and our business is about taking, core concepts about communication theory and applying them. For example, if a student comes out of graduation and doesn't understand that Marshall McLuhan said the medium is the message, then I think perhaps that student probably isn't going to understand our dynamic and digital environment. On the flip side of that, if somebody only understands that, then probably also too they won't be an effective practitioner. So I think texts like Essentials of Advertising that bring these worlds together in a really cogent and coherent way, in a very easy to understand way, integrating theory and practice are vital to creating graduates who have a chance in a very competitive market. Thanks very much.